I've now finished up the repairs to this end of the bulkhead. Made some patch panels for this plate. Put a wider flange on that because I'm going to use that to help plug weld in the closing plate on the end of the sill. So I thought that would be a better way to do it. This originally, I think I mentioned, wasn't actually welded to the rear panel. It was just loose, but I've now fitted it. And it will be plug welded to the rear panel. I'm not sure how far it went down here originally because it was rusted off, but I've put it down so it's just touching the reinforcing plate for the radius cups. Not sure whether I'll weld this direct to that, but I'm pretty sure I'll weld this cover plate, which I've also repaired the bottom end of. That will weld, obviously plug weld onto the reinforcing bracket underneath, and I'll probably put a bit of a seam weld across the top there. So that's all done. Made a repair section for the corner there, so that's all done. So this end of the car is now finished. Just got a little bit of cleaning up to do on the front bulkhead, so I'll do that, and then I'll start making the reinforcing plates for the inner sill. Now I brought my bonnet back into the workshop just to assess the damage that I need to repair. Quite a bit of rust, particularly on the, not sure what you call it, the bottom scuttle, or the piece that goes underneath. That's all rusted in the middle, and obviously rusted across the top. There's rust the plate in there and so on. What I'm going to do is to gradually clean off the steel. Now, I'm not going to work on it as such, not at this stage anyway, but I want to clean the steel off, and I'll probably, particularly on the front here, take a few profiles where it's not damaged so I can actually work out the shape of areas where it is. So as an example, this area here is not damaged. I'll take a profile across there, whereas this area on here is damaged, so I'll use the profile from the good side to use to reprofile the bad side. But anyway, I've just used stripper to take the old undercut off the front section of the bonnet here, the centre section. You can see I haven't taken it off back here. Underneath that there's a fine layer of rust, and I'll just put vinegar over that to just to clean the steel off, which will then show up the damage a bit more. All in all, just looking at the front section here, apart from rust on the edges here, both sides, the damage is actually not too bad. I've seen far worse. I mean, there's little dents and things here, there's a bit of a fold there, bit of a crease there where the bumper bar's been pushed back into the nose section, but all in all it doesn't appear to be excessively damaged. Anyway, I'll put my vinegar over the top of that with the paper towel, and I'll clean off the steel. Now this is the wrap after 6 days. I'm hoping it's worked. This is the largest area I've ever done. The wrap certainly works well on smaller areas, and it seems to keep the paper underneath moist. I have seen people use vinegar on large areas before, and what they do is that they just clean any surface rust off with some sandpaper. Then they use a scourer with vinegar and scour that down, and they leave it overnight. Now that tends to get some of the rust off, but nowhere near as much as what you get if you actually completely dip it and leave it there for a longer period. So we'll see how this has gone. It's worked on smaller areas. There's no reason why it shouldn't work on a larger area. As you can see, it looks terrible. I might have to scrape that off. I'm sort of stuck a bit more than I would normally do. This surface wasn't prepared as much as the bit I had on the bulkhead, so it seems to be sticking quite a lot. So when you first look at it, it actually looks worse than the rust that you had on there in the first place. I'll just clean up half of this to start with. A little bit dry on the bottom there, didn't stay moist. The difference with this and the bulkhead is that this has got some creases in it, so I'm interested to see how it goes in relation to those creases. Now what I'll do, this is only just straight vinegar. I could use water, but I'll use the vinegar. Alright, it's got a fair bit of the rust off. There's a little bit of undercoat I've missed. I'll just put a bit of water on that to remove the remaining bits of vinegar. Then I'll give it a light sand. See how that comes up. It's cleaned it up. There's a few areas that I've still got a little bit of rust in. I'll see if that comes off with some paper or when I scour it. So I'll keep cleaning it off and see how it comes up overall, but it certainly has removed quite a bit of the rust. A little bit looks like it might be there, but I'll scour that a bit more, see if that comes out. Anyway, it's going to take quite some time to clean all this off, so I'll clean it off and then turn the video back on. It's taken me quite some time to clean this up. The the vinegar wrap had actually gone a little bit dry. And it was a bit harder to get off. It's got most of it off. The problem I've had with this is my preparation was not quite as good as I've done on the the bits I've done on the body. Now this is some form of red oxide. It's very hard to distinguish that from patches of rust when you try and strip it off. And what I've been doing is I've found a lot of the undercoat was left on the panel, so that's one thing. The other thing, what I did on the body bits that I've done, where I actually was able to identify rust, I rubbed it back. Now I couldn't rub it right out just like that, and like that patch there. There's only so much you can do with sandpaper, but you can certainly remove the top layers. Now I didn't do that before I put the wrap down. The other issues with the bonnet is that I've got a lot of little dents and depressions. Now the wrap hasn't actually clung to the depression, so the depressions, it hasn't come out as well. That's another issue I face on this. And probably the reason it dried out is that the temperatures here have been increasing. And the other problem is I've had the garage open, and I've noticed for the last few days the sun has been coming over the front of the car. Now I've put a rag over the top, but obviously there's been enough heat to dry it out a bit, so areas of rust on this side have been a little bit, and certainly around the nose area, haven't come off quite as good. So I've just rubbed it all back. I've rubbed any excess rust off, so I can't get all of this out with a sanding pad. But I'll now put the another wrap on for a few days, and I'll keep the door shut. Now I know the temperature is going to rise, and that's a problem I have here, that this is the end of winter, and temperatures ranging from 5 to 17 normally, but they've been going up over 20, and today we'll hit 25. So I think with the warmer temperatures I'm going to have to maybe damp the wrap down twice a day. So anyway, I'll put it on for a few more days. It's got most of it off. I'm quite pleased with that. I mean, compared to what it was, it's far better. But as I say, just up around the nose, I've got a bit more to take off, so I'll put the wrap back on for a few more days. Alright, I've had this on another 4 days. I've made sure this time that it stayed quite moist, and the temperature hasn't been as warm either, so it should have worked. So if I just take one side off. Now last time this was all hard and very difficult to get off, but this time, because it's moist, it's actually peeling right off, so that's a good sign. I'll just put that over there. Now I'll just scour that with the brush. That seems a lot better. Much better. What I'll do, I'll just turn the camera off. I'll clean this up, so first with that, then wipe it down with a damp cloth, which what you've got to do just to get the remainder of the vinegar off. And then I'll put some phosphoric onto it. So I'll just see how that turns up. It looks like it's worked quite well. So I'll just turn that off, and it'll take a bit of time to scrub that all off, but I'll just do that now. And this is the surface just cleaned up with the wire brush and vinegar spray. it started to flash off with a light coating of rust. There's a bit of humidity here today, so that's to be expected. I mean, you look at that and say, well, it's not working right, but what I'll do next, I'll just go over it lightly with a bit of 80 grit here. There's a few bits of undercoat that I've missed, so I'll just make sure all those are gone. And then I'll get a scourer and some phosphoric. Well, it's mainly phosphoric acid in that, which is just a commercial rust converter. And I'll spray that on and scour that on. All of that little orange colour on there will just disappear. So I'll just do this with a sanding pad here, and then I'll show you what happens with the phosphoric. And this is always the part of the job I enjoy most. Just watching the metal come back to clean steel. And just make sure you really rub it in, because there are little pits in the surface there where the rust was that I can see. So you make sure you get it all in there. I'll just do a small section so you can see, and then I'll do a photo at the end to show you how the whole lot comes up. And just a small section here. I'm quite confident that's going to come up quite nicely. I think you can see the difference on the camera. I'll just have a look here. So it comes back to bare seal, so don't be discouraged by the fact that rust seems to appear almost immediately, but that will just kill the surface rust, and that will stay like that for, I don't know, 6 months or more. Obviously don't put it out in the weather, but if you keep the water off, if it starts to get a little tinge of rust again, just scour it again with, this is just commercial rust converter, mainly phosphoric acid in it, the main constituent. So anyway, I'll just clean the rest of it up, and make sure also that you wipe it off, the excess. Certainly with this brand anyway, it'll end up being a little bit tacky otherwise. But it's come up good. Very pleased with that. The end result's quite good. It's come up nicely. The damage to the bonnet is, just see if I can tilt that camera down. Is limited to probably dents back to about here, small dents. Dents around there. That's the worst one. It's a crease, and that's where the airbox seam is. They've tried to get it out, but very difficult to get access. So all in all, not too bad. Bit of rust on the bottom end of it, so that would need to be addressed. But what I'll do is I'll gradually now clean the rest of it off. Don't intend to work on it, but it's just something I can do in between jobs. I probably won't do an area this big because it's a bit hard to keep it moist, particularly with the weather starting to warm up. So I'll probably do areas about half that size. 6 days is normally what it would take. And it takes 6 days when you dip it, and it appears to work all right 6 days with the wrap on it, providing you keep it moist. So it means coming out and spraying it at least once a day to make sure that the paper is moist to the touch on the surface. Also make sure that the paper is flat on the surface. And also when you put the wrap on, what I've been doing is actually pushing the wrap down right onto the paper so there's no air under it. So you try and keep everything as sealed as you can. Anyway, works well. It's an alternative to sending the whole thing away and getting it dipped or blasted by some form of medium. But for a DIY restorer, it's a good way just to do things a bit at a time. Little bit of manual labour, scrubbing things off, not a lot. And if you don't mind the smell of vinegar, which is actually not, maybe I'm used to it, I can't smell it that much. Maybe it'd be different if the garage was attached to the house. You would probably smell it then. Yeah, that's just an alternative that you can look at for removing rust.